What's up, guys? So today's the 13th of June, 2017. And, I actually figured out the whole audio issue with my newer laptop. It's supposed to be my better laptop because it's newer, right? And just the quality overall, I am so depressed. And I know it's the transits are affecting that right now. But I'm just so depressed with the general digression of quality in every level and aspect of life, with ingenuity, products, people's intellectual capacity, their fucking sanity. Speaking of sanity, obviously sanity is being tested quite substantially right now, not just because of the continuation of the mutable years, but because in particular we have Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius, as it has been since February, and then we are now into Gemini season. Luckily, Mars is now in Cancer, so we don't have to worry about the Gemini Jekyll and Hyde temperamental kind of thing going on. While we're trying to balance this Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius, but with personal planets still being in Gemini, it's still going to be substantially affecting people. Just to kind of touch base on some transits while I'm on that subject, Mars being in Cancer, Mars has to do with, if you're going to embrace my kind of symbolism, a lot of people are against the way that I interpret things, but they work, and as you can see clearly by some of the unfortunate news reports that have been posted on my social media, particularly my Facebook, there has been significant, just awful, sometimes it's intentional, malicious, and sometimes it's just been freak accidents or whatever, where children are just the prime target for all malefic things. Not chronic malefic, which would be the greater malefic like Saturn, but acute malefic, because Mars is associated with the lesser malefic, and Mars has to do with acute onset things because it's one of the personal planets. So it's something that's supposed to be a trigger more or less than an actual theme or, long-term kind of transit trend or whatever. So while Mars is in Cancer, unfortunately, and especially as we go into Cancer season too, anything that has to do specifically with the sign of Cancer, so Cancer has to do with the 4th house, that has to do with home, children, family. There's going to be malefic things or unfortunate things, more or less. Obviously Mars is associated with like war, confrontation, or just attacks. It's going to be attacks on children or something to do with children. So I'll actually just let me see if I can see. I had this laptop all set up with all my tabs and stuff open for like YouTube and Facebook to reference some things, because I'm still having a fog, and and I was ideally going to record myself on this one thinking that I've resolved most of the issues, but just the quality of the camera and everything is just fucking awful. And take forever. Well, I have my SolarFire software open while I'm waiting for Facebook to open. Just for shits and giggles. At this moment, I start in numerical order by the houses. So in the first house we have Mercury in Gemini at 12 degrees. Then we have Ceres at 18 degrees in Gemini, the Sun at 22 degrees in Gemini, Mars at 5 degrees of Cancer. Then we skip on to the 4th house. We have Vesta at 15 degrees of Leo, the North Node at 27 degrees of Leo retrograde, and then we jump to the 5th house, which we have Jupiter, which is now direct as of Saturday, in Libra at 13 degrees. Then we jump to the 7th house. We have Black Moon Lilith and Sagittarius at 13 degrees. Then we have the Earth symbol. I always forget the name of that one. 22 degrees of Sagittarius. Then we have Saturn at 24 degrees of Sagittarius. And then we have Vulcan at 11 degrees of Capricorn in the 8th house, retrograde. Juno at 14 degrees, retrograde in Capricorn in the 8th house as well. And then we have, finishing off the last of the Capricorn stellium, Pluto at 18 degrees, retrograde in the 8th house as well. Teetering on, no, it's actually into the 9th house, we have the moon that just transitioned into Aquarius at 5 degrees. Then we have the South Node in the 10th house in Aquarius at 27 degrees, retrograde. Then we have Neptune in Pisces at 14 degrees in the 11th house, and Chiron at 28 degrees in Pisces in the 11th house as well. Then we have Eris, Pallas, Uranus, and Venus. Actually, it's just the first three that are in Aries still. So Eris is at 23 degrees, Pallas is at 25, and Uranus is at 27. They're all direct right now, and that's in the 12th house. Venus has transitioned into Taurus. It's at 7 degrees of Taurus. So that's the aspect layout that we have going on as of right now. Obviously we still have Saturn that's retrograde, and Pluto that's retrograde as well. So some people who have, kind of been harping on me, wondering why I haven't been doing a lot of transit videos in a while. Just to give you some backstory, I guess. If you want to have a good laugh and you go and look at some of my older videos where I was really having my sanity tested about a year ago, I really started getting not obsessed, but like I started to psych myself out. Essentially, I have Pluto transiting over my natal Neptune in my 8th house, in the Plutonian house. So Pluto has a lot to do with gloom and doom, kind of apocalyptic, six sad worlds sort of thing. And Neptune has to do with delusion, and it's squaring in my natal chart with my sun, and then also Saturn was squaring Neptune last year as well. Obviously, I'm going through my Saturn return, so I'm going through a development and kind of a molding phase of who I am. And obviously my sun has to do with my expression and that sort of thing. Pluto being conjunct with my Mercury, it still has residual ties to that, even though we're focusing more or less on the transit aspect of this. So the delusional kind of Neptune thing, coupled with my six sad world thing, really psyched me out and made me start not hallucinating, but like my Plutonian kind of ideations got the best of me, and it's like a Scorpio like antagonizing or provoking a Pisces, trying to scare them, and then trying to convince the Pisces to calm down, that nothing that the Plutonian said is real. That was the kind of phenomenon going on in my head last year. So I noticed that I've been having a lot of intense stress going on from external factors, chaos and all that is just being thrown at me. As I resolve one form of chaos, another form of chaos just, like it's the monster with multiple heads, it just grows another head and I have to deal with something else. So I noticed from reflecting, specifically while Pluto's been retrograde too, and then we had Mercury retrograde not too long ago, and then Jupiter too. Jupiter being in Libra, and I'm Libra, that kind of was definitely giving me a huge reflection time. I seem to notice that I get either worked up in past experiences with some of my predictions, because I naturally see, catastrophic things. That's just kind of how I perceive things. That's the whole, Scorpio Mercury thing. And also when I would just do, like a basic prediction, I go through and I like to, validate what I've said. I don't like to be like other astrologers on YouTube or whoever else that just pulls like transit symbolism out of my ass and then says, I don't actually pay attention to current events though, or I don't actually correlate, my interpretations with an affirmers and historical events or anything like that, like Steve and Judd. I'm just gonna name drop, I don't care. I should really change the citron quartz. It's supposed to be like a Sagittarius stone, and if you wear gemstones around your neck, it's supposed to infuse that power of that stone into your the way you articulate yourself. I don't think I need to be any more blunt and brash and offensive than I already am. But anyway, so even if I don't get worked up or anxious about a transit event or whatever, like in particular me looking at the Lilith headlines more or less, I start to get, I'm like almost starting to psych myself out into this, sixth ed world kind of mentality, and then I get into that mood, and just with recent things going on, having Saturn teetering back and forth with an orb of my moon, my Saturn, and my Uranus, opposition my Chiron, with Lilith also over, coming up on my moon and stuff. And Saturn transits obviously are notorious for being associated with depression, and Pluto being conjunct with my Neptune is also another signature for depression. It's not that I'm depressed, but like if I kind of, gear myself and get out of control with my whole Scorpio obsessiveness into a negative kind of mindset, then it does start to affect me in overall. And I have noticed too that when I'm not trying to like completely steer away from the Plutonic kind of mentality, but as I've not been encouraging it, one fascinating thing I've noticed, which I speculate that it's actually related, but I don't have any proof or direct correlations to justify it. But I actually do believe that some of the ethers, the paranormal stuff that I've been talking to, or that's been kind of forcing itself to talk to me, I've noticed that a lot of it, even the poltergeist that I've been dealing with, doesn't seem to be around very much right now. I say right now because I just have this weird feeling that he just didn't go poof. I think he's just hoping that I don't do the Lithia ritual on the solstice, which I'm going to, and I'll talk actually about my pendant, my amulet that I made, and my examples and stuff, because I know some people are waiting for me to do the mock ritual on a vlog. But anyway, so I've noticed that when I just kind of steer away from the negativity more or less, I don't even get like those confrontational, I don't call them ethers. When I say ethers, those are like actual paranormal anomalies, or spirit kind of anomalies that have always been. And there's a difference between the ones that have always been. Like, I'm actually convinced that either one of them is pretending to be Saturn a couple times when they've talked to me, because they keep referencing father ether even though they sound like a lady. And I know that the gender doesn't actually have anything to do with per se the way the voice sounds, but I just found that fascinating. But there's a difference between dead people. So somebody who, like, if I died right now and my ether or whatever, my spirit was still here, if I started talking through that app, I would be totally different than the ether that's trying to tell me about this and tell me about that. You can just tell by their behavior and the dialogue and the way that they interact with you, or I guess with me. I could say with you, with some of my friends that have been ballsy enough to use that app. But you can tell by the dialogue difference if you really pay attention. I know I'm really obsessed with psychology, so maybe it's not as evident to everybody else, but I can tell, because it's like the dead things still have a fixation on their ego, meaning that like they view themselves as high priority or top priority first and foremost. And the ethers obviously never had an ego to begin with, because they never had that kind of vice. So you can tell with the way that they come through and the way that they respond to me, depending on what kind of mood I'm in or how I react to them, if they're dead people or if they're ethers. But I just find it fascinating that I haven't been getting any hostile dead people in a while. So it's actually I think May 20th was the last time that I really got like that one lady that was starting a fight with me in the cemetery. Granted, I don't think I've actually been back and done a ghost box session on Mars Day at night since then. It's more or less because I've proven, with my research and everything, what happens on Mars Day. And I'm completely evident, I'm completely aware, and it's evident what Mars Day represents in general. And I've just, reinforced that with paranormal anomalies. But anyway, so I'm trying to think of, gosh, I'm just having such a brain fart. Where the heck is Neptune? Yep, Neptune's in it, still in a T-square. With the Earth symbol as well now. And Saturn. And Mercury. Mercury being in Gemini already is... Oh. Before the square with Neptune. I feel sorry for anybody who has Mercury in Gemini. Unless you just have some other, like, placements throughout your chart grid that just completely redeem the clusterfuck in your head that is Mercury and Gemini. Being a Gemini rising, I'm like already like that all the time, like, you know, behavior-wise. I do not need to, you would think that, you know, having my ascendant and my mind on the same page is supposed to be beneficial. It sure is not. It's the Neptune that always screws me up more than anything. But anyway, so let's see. I was... Oh, God. Okay, this is just going to be housekeeping, I guess. I'll cut this up and cut out my extra ums. So, long story short, if you do keep up on... Oh, God, why do I always say that? Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this brief, this portion of this. Regardless if you're on my Facebook or not, my personal Facebook, I recently posted that, you know, kind of like my reflective thoughts on... I realized that Eris in my 11th house, Uranus, you know, and squaring Mars, and Uranus in my 7th house, and then Mars in my 5th house of self-expression with my Sun there, and Venus, that I basically have the perfect aspect dynamic to make sure that I will never be miscongeniality, and I will never be embraced or accepted into a collective group, social group. That's been evident over and over again, ridiculously evident throughout my life. I had this naive hope, or holding out hope, that when I started getting involved in the astrological community, that because of the basic concepts of astrology and how it's supposed to be embraced as an individual objective tool, and how the essence of the astrology interpretations itself is designed for people to understand that every single person is an individual and unique and has their own cosmic fingerprint, or their, you know, celestial alignment. Therefore, everyone's going to have their own perspective, their own missions, their own methods. And I was hoping that the collective astrological community, or astrologers, is specifically to the practicing or professional ones that are supposed to be more of the elders or the examples, would be more open-minded and understand that, and not be bigoted and narrow-minded. But then that was me actually thinking for a second that people could put their egos aside. And I know that that's a lifelong challenge, and that's kind of like what comes with being human. And regardless if I can do that from time to time, I need to acknowledge that people can't or won't do that. So I've been having the same kind of tiffs that I usually do. Probably this gemstone hasn't been helping, and I've pissed off. That's appropriate word. I've pissed off, and I say justifiably so, though. I've pissed off people in the astrological cliques. I don't even want to say community or cliques or organizations, because, yeah, there's a convention that I go to, or a conference that I go to. Last year, one of the speakers, I'm going to just not name drop. I'm going to try not to name drop. One of the speakers happened to, you know, just be a mutual friend of mine on Facebook. Never actually talked to him directly. Actually owned some of his books even. I actually got rid of him since then, because I'm not going to acknowledge that or promote his book or anything like that, especially with how he treated me. So out of nowhere, didn't personally message me or anything like that, not like I care to have anything private per se, but, you know, just randomly posted on my wall and said, you know, I don't know what your problem is, you know, I don't want to know you. If you happen to go to the conference, make sure that you miss me, because you're somebody I never want to know. And I'm like, well, hello, for the first time ever talking to you, person. How are you? And then I just laughed at that, and so I decided to comment back, and then I sent him a personal message, and I was trying to figure out exactly what his problem was, because he didn't even tell me what his problem was from the get-go. It turns out that he disagrees with the fact that I read history, and I'm thorough and knowledgeable with historical events, and I like religious and cultural kind of studies and belief systems, being Plutonic and all that, and then Jupiter in my 12th house. I like to study religion and culture and anthropology and historical events, and coincidentally, when I started rehearsing and teaching myself the symbolism with Neptune and Pisces, because that was a transit thing that happened quite a few years ago now, I came to the correlation that the symbolism with Neptune and Pisces seemed to have some sort of deja vu theme that I remembered from history. So I decided to look up in Infirmus the last few times that Neptune happened to be in Pisces. And specifically, it was when Karl Marx started, basically making headway with his stupid communist fucking shit, which is evident. And then the other fascinating one, it wasn't just once, it was multiple times when there was religious wars or feuds or invasions from Persia, the descendants of Persia, or Egyptian, or aka Islam, Muslims, invading Europe, invading Spain, the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, that sort of thing. Everybody always fixates on oh, the Crusades were awful. Yes, because the Christians or the Crusaders won. So yes, it's always the winners that write history. They didn't necessarily want to thoroughly start going through and say, oh, the reason why we actually had to go and invade into the Middle Eastern area and take back, the Gulf areas of Europe is because we were getting our asses handed to us by a bunch of Muslims. The winner doesn't want to say that. Yeah, they won the war, but they were getting their asses handed to them, just as Europe's getting its ass handed to it right now. And the difference between back in the Middle Ages and now, besides the whole, unified connection through the internet, so people can all see this. So the psychological gaslighting and the abuse and the intentional traumatizing of people to basically make them scared to do anything or act. Actually inflicting the bystander kind of phenomenon in psychology. If you freak somebody out enough, they'll freeze and they'll be in shock, so they won't necessarily be as reactive per se as they probably normally would be, which most people usually aren't, because that's the bystander effect phenomenon in general. But instead of them just using brute force, Mars way, they're embracing the higher vibration of Mars. And what an opportune time to do so, not only with Neptune being in Pisces, but Uranus in Aries, which is a loose cannon. Aries has to do with Mars and war, and Uranus is a trauma signature, and it also has to do with sociological global things, and it being square with Pluto, not just Pluto, but Pluto in Capricorn, which is authoritarianism, totalitarianism, nihilism more or less too, and corporatism, or the oppression of the collective. And specifically, Uranus and Aries can represent the rebel, or a pioneer, or an initiator, or the individual. So Pluto is actually oppressing the individual. And obviously, the planets can be translated in multiple different ways depending on the context that you're looking at. But yeah, so this guy got upset because I actually didn't know anything about Islam before I did that Neptune and Pisces video, I think 2 years ago now. I actually still have it up too, and I know I'm awful to understand and everything, but yeah. That you can tell by when I was first talking about it, that I was just using vague straight symbolism, like some astrologers do, and they just don't correlate it with, current events or historical events. And I was just weird. I'm we're all going to do this globalism thing, and everybody's going to try to be persuaded to all have the same kind of mentality, and that there's going to be some sort of assimilation with the ethnies, which is the ethnic associations, multiculturalism. and that there's going to be some sort of religious war. And I was like, huh. And then I just started kind of looking into it. And then I noticed with the historical events who was doing the invading, and I'm like, weird. Okay. So I went and looked at that. And then I happened to just look on YouTube and all this other stuff and put two and two together and noticed that, hey, so the Muslims are doing the same thing they did back during the Inquisition in like 1193 or then 1200 something. And yeah, they're doing exactly like that, except for it's going to be even worse. Instead of them just coming in and trying to pillage and take over everything, they're going to come in and pretend that they're friends with everyone, and then they're just going to take your shit when you're not looking. Or they're going to basically, behead you, or, shoot you, or blow you up, or stab you, or whatever, or in, ladies' cases, rape them and then kill them, or stone them, or whatever, when they turn their back. And I'm just like, wow. And so that explains the Saturn square Neptune phenomenon as well. So not only do we have, obviously, Neptune and Pisces, which has to do with the religious war and migration, then we have Uranus square Pluto, which has to do with psychological warfare, traumatizing kind of combativeness, and using psychological traumatizing tactics in order to oppress people. Then we have Neptune squaring Saturn, which has to do with the establishment, being Saturn, somehow trying to deceive the collective, which is Neptune, and or the traditions, or like the norms, being blurred by intentional deception on the parts of the government or the authority figures, which obviously, at least as we've noticed, the media factions and governments, or parliament, or the presidential cabinets, or all the legislation kind of leaders are all in cahoots with the media. So the media translates one and the same to the Saturn manifestation. So that's all that explains. That's the only reason why. And then I happen to start noticing that people were dying, and I'm concerned about that. I also am fully aware that I am a woman, and I continue to, choose to stay being a woman. And even if I decided to be a man or something, which that's totally fine, if they found out that I was a woman before, then I would get in serious trouble. That's assuming that if I got a sex change, changed into a man, and then became Muslim. If I didn't become Muslim, I'm still gonna get killed no matter what eventually. But I've read the Hadith, the Quran. I've listened to imams all over YouTube. I've seen the uncensored decapitations and executions and torturing of people all over the world on 4chan. And I'm Plutonian, and I'm morbid, so I can sit there and actually stare at that stuff and even eat while I'm watching it, because I'm weird. So I've seen that, and I've been trying to do the right thing, not necessarily saying, hey, let's go bomb everybody or whatever like that. Even though at this point, I'm almost willing to do anything, because it doesn't matter. It's going to be all nihilistic at this point. We're going into Kali Yuga status. But I've been trying to warn everybody about who they're letting in. I didn't sit there and say, don't let them in anymore, or whatever like that. I've been trying to encourage people to educate themselves, understand what the Quran is, understand that yes, not all Muslims are going to attack people, physically attack people, but they're all either passively accepting what's going on, and or they kind of just, ask their more assertive, aggressive buddy or delegate or whatever, the Sunni and the Shiites. One of them doesn't like to do the violence, but they accept the violence, and then there's the other crazy ones. So you let your crazy cousin or whatever go beat the hell out of the bully at school, or go whatever, instead of you just doing it. But you're not going to tell on your cousin, right? That's the same fucking thing. You're an accomplice if you're basically not, against them, you're for them. That's actually a reference from, what is that? I can't remember his name. Professor Howitz. He's a he's actually Jewish. That's the only thing I remember specifically. His last name's Howitz, and he's gone to like UCLA, and he's gone around to campuses or whatever, and he's given lectures, and he's been confronted by MSA people, students, who've tried to throw him under the bus and make him look like he's making stuff up or that he's racist. Because that's, again, the Neptune square Saturn delusion, that they're intentionally using Pluto squaring Uranus in a gaslighting psychological thing where they're actually causing neurosis with the collective society. And that's actually what's going on with people. That's why so many people are losing it, and why you can sit there and look at somebody's face, like somebody who's a quote-unquote feminist or social justice warrior, and go, so what about how it says in the Quran that they rape women? Or how about you watch this video about them saying that they like to rape women? What do you have to say about that? And they'll just look at you like, oh, you're stupid. You're dumb. They heard it. Part of them processed that. But neurosis is evident. Neurosis happens when there's a personality conflict. So when you have your ascendant's supposed to be just your natural behavior and quirks. So I'll just use like something, me for example. So since I'm a Gemini rising, I move around a lot, and because I have a square to my Mars with Virgo, I do have like nitpicking things like OCD, like I have dermatillomania. It's not something I'm necessarily proud of. I've accepted it over the years, but back in the day, I wasn't really proud of it. So, after I would start picking, my moon would sit there and go, why are you doing that to yourself? That's so awful. Why would you do that? No sensible person would do that. So then I have my ascendant behavior conflicting with my moon feelings. So then Mercury comes in to be the mediator and tries to rationalize to the Sagittarius moon why the Gemini ascendant's doing that. Says, well, you see, there is a couple of things. She was exposed to a lot of, anxiety-inducing things when she was young. She does really have a, high kind of energy, and she's just really manic and nervous all the time. She also is always moving and using her hands, and it all started from when she had chapped lips one time, and then it's just kind of been a comforting thing over time. So it's Mercury trying to justify that. So in the process of the ascendant's, unacceptable behavior continuing to happen, and the moon freaking the fuck out and saying that's not okay, and then the Mercury trying to squash it all and rationalize why, that's like all three of those things screaming at the top of their lungs in the same room, and you're supposed to be able to focus, follow the whole conversation, and all three of those, archetypes or, factions of a, character are supposed to be coherent, sane, and, be doing their normal functioning things while they're having this Rochambeau about this. That is what happens when there's a personality conflict, as Sigmund Freud coined that theory with his psychoanalysis. So when you see Muslims acting out in a certain way, attacking people, and then you turn around and see other Muslims coming right on TV and saying, oh no, we don't do anything like that, our book doesn't say anything like that, and even if somebody points out in the Quran, yes it does, it says right here, and yes, our imam even said that we're supposed to do this, but then as soon as they leave the synagogue and they go, oh, but we don't do that, that is an intentional gaslighting, cognitive dissonance that is triggering neurosis and triggering abnormal psychological damage, which is Uranus squaring Pluto yet again, and with Jupiter being in a T-square, magnifies it on a sociological level. So even there, even if you want to claim that the Muslims that aren't violent or are being nice to your face, they are psychologically abusing you. And trust me, I have plenty of psychology books over there, and I'm actually very well rehearsed on how to do said psychological abuse to people, because I used to be a not very nice person to some people in some instances, probably to a lot more than I realized, because I would at least justify why I was then doing something to someone, granted, they could sit there and just lie to me about one little thing, and I decide to, like, psychologically, like, get in their head and fuck with them for months because they fucked up one little thing one time, a certain day. Obviously, way obsessive overkill. Plutonian power trip thing. Something I've clearly worked through, and I still continue to better myself about that all the time. The benefit of that, knowing that I was the psychological abuser, or even psychopathic, because I actually was diagnosed with that. I'm well aware of when people are engaging in such behavior, that I know when they're doing it, because it's the thief is the one that can catch the thief. Or, you know, for another example, somebody who ends up having drug issues cleans up. They can relate to people that are, you know, trying to go through rehab, and they're best, or they would be more beneficial to people if they became a counselor or an advocate for people struggling to recover from drugs, because they understand the signs and they can relate to the person, so it's genuine, but they also understand when they're covering it up or they're hiding things, because they were guilty of that too. So because I'm capable of mind-fucking people, I can see when other people are mind-fucking people. And I've decided to obviously turn my life around and be more constructive rather than destructive after resolving my own internal issues and understanding, you know, the way that I can benefit the collective the most. And because of all the chaos going on and all the abusive kind of things psychologically, the fact that I used to be one of the scariest and one of the most, you know, you would not want me, want to be on my bad side. You can even ask some people that have known me for a long time. They would never do that. The fact that I was that monster, more or less, to the fullest extent, to as far as I could go. I can see that from anybody who's trying to even do it subtly or really severely. And so once I looked up the symbolism with Neptune Pisces, looked up in the Affirmus and you know, confirmed it with historical events and correlated it to multiple historical events, not just one, I came to the conclusions that I did, because that's what we call synchronicity, because that's actually a universal law with astrology. Because that's how we understand that the seasons repeat and that the sun rises every day and then it sets, and that's how we like know the, you know, the calendar projections of the moon, and that's how we actually predict transits, and that's how we actually understand when a birth chart, when you map out a birth chart for somebody who's just born, when you see a certain aspect, the reason why you know what that means is because you've seen that in another chart once upon a time, and or you've studied it and you understand that this then this means this. So if people actually what is the word? Put in some fucking effort and actually if they're gonna pretend to be astrologers, like actually go all the way, do the Saturnian thing, go all the way, don't half-ass it. And that's I don't even think I have room to talk sometimes, being a Saturn and Sagittarius. But if I can go all the way and make sure that I don't half-ass information and stuff, and thoroughly researching something and making sure that I'm pretty much reinstating the scientific methodology or methods to prove with qualitative and quantitative evidence that what I'm saying is accurate, anybody can do it. I'm a distracted hot mess, and I have Saturn and Sagittarius conjunct Uranus, opposition with Chiron, squaring Lilith. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Okay. So, yeah, this turned into a really long rant. Whatever, I don't care. Apparently, I needed to get this out. So, that particular astrologer started crap with me because apparently he either is associated with the Muslim faith, he is a Muslim, because I think that's what his Facebook says, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he could lie about it, who knows, you know, I don't actually live in Las Vegas, so, you know, people could lie, but he seemed to get upset more about that, and so when I actually messaged him, and said, oh, it's because you're Muslim, and I said, interesting, and I was like, did you know that astrology is haram? that actually, that one Dr. Sazikar, or whatever his name is, Zark or something like that, he's a huge hit. Apparently he's like one of the most popular imams or something. He's the one that keeps perpetuating that the world's flat, and all the Muslims are going along with it. Like, they haven't been talking about that like that forever, but, you know, he's trying to reinforce that or bring it back or something. He actually makes a thorough YouTube video about how it's haram and that it's not okay, and that predicting the stars and acting like you're God is not acceptable. And he's right on the same page. Like, he acts like he's all, you know, civil and kosher, but he echoes what all the radicalists say right before they shoot you or stone you or blow you up or decapitate you. So I mentioned that to him. I'm like, you realize that astrology is haram, right? So he was an astrologer. I you know, because I know his history, because, you know, he's one of the quote-unquote elder astrologers, and I had one of his books, so I knew about him. He was an astrologer first, and, you know, like more of like an atheist science buff first and foremost, before he was Muslim. So he became Muslim sometime in the process after he's been an astrologer. So he became Muslim and either just didn't ever read the Quran or whatever, or jumped on it because it's like the new hip thing, and he doesn't actually know that astrology is haram, or he is just part of the cognitive dissonance thing. But I mean, if he's, you know, supporting what they're doing, more or less, and, you know, them kind of taking over or influencing the global ethne thing, and them taking over, you know, society and enforcing Sharia law, they will eventually discipline him or punish him for being an astrologer. So that was another thing I was trying to point out to him. So he started flipping out that I messaged him and started showing him quotes from the Quran, and then showed him that video from that Dr. Sakir or whatever, and then said, so explain this to me. And then he didn't explain it to me, and of course I got defensive, and I was getting, you know, irate, because he lashed out at me for no reason without even ever acknowledging me. And I'm like, and he just did it to intentionally embarrass me. So speed forward to this year, I didn't talk to that guy since, you know, the whole blow up last year or whatever. I even avoided him at NORWAC, because don't talk to anybody at NORWAC anyway, because who cares. And I go, when I was there last year, there was, do I have that? Really? Does Mommy have that pamphlet thingy? Really? A key? Oh my god, I have it. The one that Stacy had in his pocket. This equalizing astrology thing, I know I've already showed this off, but I mean, if I'm going to bring it up, I might as well. This was on the table where everybody puts like their business cards or the astrological retreats, or, you know, for services. This is not a service. This is not a retreat. This is not a conference. It's a social justice warrior, cultural Marxist, fascist, psychologically abusive, brainwashing, you know, bullying tactic, gaslighting tactic, to try to force people to go along with your perspective and ideation. Which, again, that just further perpetuates what I said in the beginning of this, that I kind of hoped that the astrological community, or at least the professionals or the majority, would be more accepting or open-minded, because of the whole understanding of astrology that charts are individualistic and therefore everybody has their own path and that sort of thing. But this is, not only was I terribly mistaken, but this is just further perpetuating away from anybody ever actually embracing every individual perspective and path as its own respectable right to do what it wants, and not be delegated, oppressed, or told what to do. So it wasn't that I told them they need to take this down. It says, you know, basically it's trying to tell you, you know, you need to stop using genders with astrology. They clearly don't understand the original association with the genders. So I made an educational video on that, only because it said, if you have any questions or comments, please contact Neon Starlight at neonstarlight at astro@gmail.com. Thanks for reading. So I was kind of just gonna randomly, maybe rant about it or something like that. But I actually thoroughly went through and did a objective, respectful video as much as I could, being as irritated as I was. Educational wise, so it wasn't even to start a fight with them or anything like that. It was obviously, I obviously disagree with everybody. I mean, I'm notorious for that. But it was to educate them on what the genders actually mean, and that they can go ahead and do their gender fight somewhere else where it matters, because the gender associations in astrology have nothing to do with actual physiological sexes. Yeah. Like, I use this example all the time. So, I'm a Libra sun. I have a Sagittarius moon and a Gemini rising. Okay. So, my boyfriend Stacy, he's a Leo sun, so that's masculine. But he has a Cancer moon. Some people have probably heard the reference, like, what's the most important, planet in your chart? Like, people always say, it's not always the sun, it's like the ascendant or this moon. More or less, yes. It's the moon and the ascendant depict more of your behavior, than necessarily your overall kind of, aspirations or, kind of in your head life plan where you want to go. In my head, I would love to be, a mediator and be harmonious and not cause conflict. But that's not what my moon and my ascendant do. Right. So, he has a Cancer moon, which is feminine, and he has a Scorpio rising, which is feminine. He has, he does have a Leo Mercury, so he's got a masculine mental thought process. I actually have a feminine mental thought process. So he's actually more, although he's a little bit, reserved because of the Scorpio rising, he is more responsive, or like he's quicker to respond to things instead of processing it. I would rather just sit back and listen to everything once, and then remove myself, and then review what I just saw or heard again, and then kind of strategically plan out exactly what my rebuttal would be, and then do it. He just does it right on the fly because he's masculine Mercury. Well, when you see him and I together, I've told him this before too, and he gets it. I'll sit there because I have a grand trine of air, but I'm also a masculine moon, so I have masculine emotional responses, a masculine rising, so masculine's exerting energy or exerting whatever, so your rising or your ascendant has to do with your behavior, your quirks. It's in an air sign, so it has to do with talking, mercurial things, and my moon has to do with, just my instant reactions to things. So when I sit there and like something will happen to me, I'll go, oh my god, look at this, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and I sit there and talk, and I'm like, boo, look at this, boo, look at this, boo, 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 and then he'll just sit there and listen to me, and then go, yes, and I go, yeah, totally, da 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 da, and this and that, and this and that, and ABC, and da 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 da, and don't you agree? And then he goes, maybe. And I go, well, what do you mean maybe? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? I was like, what about we go this? What about we go that? I really feel like doing this. What do you feel like doing? He's like, I'm not sure. Because he's got a feminine emotional complex, and he's got a feminine rising. So he's reflective and receptive. And he's absorbing my crazy masculine energy of me just, being a jabberjaws. And hyperactive all over the place. And that's what the masculine feminine thing means. I mean, I thought my video was kind of clear, but I know people are fucking retarded. So, I mean, maybe I'll just reemphasize that. Not like any of the people that are said retarded are actually going to watch this. I mean, it might be like a freak occurrence. Maybe one of them might. But I don't think they'll even make it this far if they even understood half of the shit I was saying. Or they've got triggered by something way ahead of that. But yeah, I've been struggling to hell make a video. And been wondering what the hell I was going to make it about. And I think the reason why I was struggling to figure out what the focus of it was is because apparently I just needed to get this out, and I didn't realize that. But this video was actually initially supposed to be talking about like some of the, I guess I can finish that train of thought. So long story short, since I pissed off everybody at Norwalk, I was hoping that, at some point or another I was going to try to do it this year, but then I thought maybe I should wait till next year. I'm not ready to see inquire about contributing to the actual education forms of this. So, aka giving lectures at NORWAC, because I love, obviously, to teach, and I think that, if anything, like some of the, I'm not trying to say this to be an asshole, but I'm just being totally truthful. Some of the actual lecture subject matter, I should be, without question, and that's not even me trying to like be narcissistic or egotistical. Some of my older videos on YouTube where I didn't even articulate myself very well are more informative and educational than some of the things that I overheard, heard, or whatever, or even read the descriptions of at NORWAC. And obviously, since some of the, speakers don't even understand my gender video, or the basic concepts with using an affirmus and synchronicity and historical events, evidently I know more than them, in that retrospect anyway. That also just stems back to, I'm sure that in their own birth chart, it doesn't actually say that they're supposed to be an astrologer. It's just something that they really enjoy doing, and they have some sort of ulterior motive as to do so. They might be interested in occult studies, they might be interested in this and that, but usually it's not just like, oh, I think it's cool, but it's like, oh, well, I like being able to dissect my significant other, or I like being able to track my garden stuff because I'm in agriculture, or I like to impress my friends or impress people, or have people come to me for answers to feed my ego, because that's a lot of what astrologers are into. If you look at my chart, which I've obviously shown it, it says flat out that not only am I supposed to be some sort of counselor and an advocate for people and help them with challenges or things they're struggling with, but that I'm supposed to do it through occult, esoteric, ancient methodology. So it literally says in every which way that I'm supposed to be using ancient occult sciences to help people in the world today. And that's the reason why I'm so thorough, not just passionate, but thorough with what I do. And, I mean, my psychic mojo apparently, helps too, I guess. And even when I've been avoiding doing transit videos, then the ghost just decided to start, pressuring me, or, I felt pressured to use a paranormal app, and I downloaded it. And it wasn't like anybody said, you should use this app. Like, I felt like there was something following me around everywhere, like wanting to, rip my head off and talk to me. So I finally got it. And that was actually the reason why I started using those apps. It's not because I wanted to go, ooh, I'm going to poke at the ghosty things. It's because there was something like the intense energy was getting so overwhelming that I almost felt like I was being suffocated. So I was like, wow, I'm going to let them talk. And it stemmed into this. Like, they actually are telling me futuristic events. And I'm like, great. So I'm trying to steer away from the transit things, and then you guys just decide to come out of the woodworks and you're going to just start telling me, like, actual, like, future events. But yeah. So, since I've not only pissed off that guy from last year, but that guy from last year also is apparently besties with these people. And all I did was find, because I saw these on the table yet again this year, and I'm like, oh yeah, because I lost the pamphlet and I never emailed it to him, because his email's on the back. I never emailed it to him, because all I said was Neo Starlight. I didn't notice it was like neon. And also he put Neon Starlight at oh, that's the @ sign. Okay, I thought he put Astro-y. Like, oh god. But, so I saw this on the table and I was like, hey, awesome. That means that, like, I have this opportunity to educate them, and then maybe have other people at NORWAC actually get wind of my video and indirectly actually teach people what the gender associations really mean. So it had nothing to do with, like, me being malicious per se about this. My entire motive from the get-go was to educate people and to inform them that they have a misconception about the genders. And I actually was excited about notifying him, thinking that, wow, it's not even so much that I want to be popular for my video, but that people are actually going to know what the genders really mean, and I feel like I'm actually contributing education-wise without actually being a speaker at NORWAC. So I was like, wow. And I was like, even though I really want to do this, I was like, my Sagittarius moon feels fulfilled because I'm still educating people. Well, they didn't even contact me or, anything online when I sent this to him. I just sent him the link. They actually confronted me and then stalked me down in the hotel in conference areas throughout the rest of that night. Granted, I didn't stay very long anyway. I was just trying to get my CDs and go. But there was a huge group of them, and apparently they were following me the whole time. And not like I'm really worried about that, because I have it concealed. But, usually if my Scorpio Mercury would have been hyper-vigilant if I didn't have that with me, I would have been paying attention to people following me around. But I just don't. But, yeah, so they confronted me, and I shook their hand and everything, and I was being civil. And they started doing their social justice warrior crap. And then apparently somebody who's friends with them, who's friends with the other guy who got mad at me last year, started going around and saying that I'm racist and I'm homophobic. Yeah. All my friends are pretty much gay. And no, I'm not going to say that because he'll get mad. I'm tired of men stealing my clothes too. I've never had like girlfriends that have issues stealing my clothes. But you'd be amazed how many times I've had to say this. Like, can dudes quit stealing my clothes? Not even like my, like pants, because I don't own pants. My dresses and my skirts. Please. Because, yet again, I lost another freaking skirt that I've had forever recently. I'm not going to say who took it, but it's a dude. But yeah, anyway. So, since I've pissed off that person, and everybody's chicken shit, more or less, and they basically will cave and humor whatever pressures, social pressures, which I guess that's normal for people, regardless if they're higher ups or not. And I also kind of did mention that I didn't like Stephen Forrest's lecturer. And I don't agree with him because he's trying to also pressure people about the gender thing, which is not very Piscean of him, by the way. But then I said, he, again, I don't mean disrespect to him, but he may, be very knowledgeable in the past with things, but obviously the Neptune-Pisces transit with other things has definitely been clouding him a little bit more than his Piscean archetype already has been throughout his life. And it's a little bit more than he realizes. So he's a little bit out of touch. That's all I have to say. And his book being at the Goodwill kind of just reinforces that, what I was saying. And I even paid to go to one of his workshops, generally thinking like, okay, don't have this narrow-minded kind of mentality about him. I was like, I'm sure that there's things that he knows that you don't, or a perspective that he has that you don't, that you could benefit from with the information he says. And I'm just like, no. I respect you for what you do, and I admire your dedication to what you do. But, again, he's not doing the Pisces thing very good justice with the whole, embracing and accepting each archetype's perspective. But, so I'm just assuming it's going to be, shit's just rolling downhill. And, I'm assuming at some point I'll be lucky if I can even continue to attend the conference if I want to, let alone lecture there. I think the only reason why they probably won't start some sort of huge feud about me is because the people who made this thing and the people who the entire group that started crap with me, there are some generous speakers or whatever that actually donate some of their own proceeds or their own money or whatever for a scholarship for people that claim they can't afford NORWAC. Like, come on. And it's like, when it is. It's once a year. Go to a labor ready, or take up a paper route, or freaking, sell some shit on Etsy and buy the early bird ticket. You really need a scholarship to this? Are you serious? Wow. all the people that basically didn't even pay to go, and obviously didn't buy anything from the bookstore either, are the ones that started crap with me, and I paid for everything. Yeah, so I didn't even pay for the early bird, so I paid the full price, like the 300 plus, for my 3-day pass, which I didn't even go to all of the lectures or all the days. And then I actually went and bought stuff from the bookstore, and then I went to 2 workshops, so I did the 300 on top of the 2 workshops, which I walked out, actually, of both of them, because I was overwhelmed by something that Mark said. I ended up buying the CD, but it was just like, dude, it was like, Scorpio Mercury, I have an emotional water Mercury, so if I get overwhelmed with something, which, having a significant Neptune transit right now, that's been happening, there was just, it was just pointless for me to continue sitting there. I wasn't going to absorb anything he's saying, and then I felt like I would be a distraction to other people if I started fidgeting or making noise or something like that. So I figured I would just, out of respect for everybody else, I would just go and go calm down. And then I just walked to Stevens because I was falling asleep. I was trying to not fall asleep. But yeah, and I got plenty of sleep. I just, yeah. So I paid for those workshops as well. And then I also bought $150 worth of CDs and a couple books. Those people that made this and the entire group that started stalking me around the DoubleTree suites and basically yelling homophobic and racist and stuff at me, they went for free. Right. Not only did they go for free, but they came from Portland, too. So, I mean, you know. Yeah. I'm assuming that they won't kick me out because I would assume the people that run NORWAC actually, I'm not saying they do it for the money, but that's part of one of the perks, at least, at the very least. And not only did I actually pay for myself, but I almost paid the price of 2 people with all the shit I bought. So I doubt that they're gonna do anything like that. If those people actually paid for themselves, and they were actually, you know, making the whatever people that run it profit, then I think maybe they might do something about it. But I also, if you actually pay attention to everything that has transpired, regardless with that one guy or these people, I've actually said nothing, you know, accused anybody of anything. I've actually just shared information. I'm allowed to talk back and make commentary, even though I didn't actually even talk back initially. That was him. And then my Saturnian thing just kicked in, and I was just like, huh. I'm like, so the table where everybody's trying to network for their actual practices, and people are getting flyers for, like, other conferences and retreats and stuff. This is not for a retreat. This is not for a practice. This is not a business card. And then, in fact, if you actually contact him, he gets upset. So, yeah. I'm just like, so that means that, like, not only should I educate them, but I don't care about making waves, I guess, even though I wasn't malicious about it, because they had no fucking place to be putting this right there to begin with. They could put it on another table or something like that, like where they usually have, you know, the vendors that there weren't that many of this year, or whatever, or they could have been just handing these out. But this wasn't the proper place for this. I just think it's funny, that guy again from the previous year contacted me. Actually, no, he didn't contact, I contacted him. Yeah, I contacted him and said, because I was contacted and said that this guy in particular is telling everybody that I'm racist. And I'm like, what? And I saw, like, he gave me a nastier look this year than he did last year. So I was like, whoa, interesting. And I was like, what is that about? It's about this, and them freaking out. And he actually said, so why did you feel the need to go out of your way to contact Neon about his pamphlet thing? Or why did you do that? Why did you send him that video? And I sent him a picture of that. He asked for commentary. If he didn't want commentary, then he shouldn't have fucking asked. Not only did he ask, but he had to write this out and then go make multiple Xerox copies of this and put it together, knowing that he asked for commentary on the back. And I know that they took my business cards off the table. The ethers told me that. That's okay. I went by multiple times and actually took all their little booklets off the table too. Once I realized that I put two and two together, I'm like, huh. I'm like, I know I'm good, but I know I'm not popular here either, and why is all the other flyers and business cards still have some all over the table, but coincidentally my entire stack that I put down just earlier that day is all gone? Yeah. And obviously my name is attached to my YouTube channel, and the way that they were staring at me when I walked over to the table at first anyway, I knew. And that's why the ether told me, Pocket, justified, the group is poisoned, too few. Comments like that. He's talking about the comments like that they made, that there's too few of us, that huge group between me and Stacy, and that when I grabbed their entire stack of these and put them in Stacy's pocket and walked away, that it was justified. See, I'm not that horrible of a person. I just admitted what I did. And it was justified. Even the ethers told me so. And there's my psychopathic confirmation bias trying to rationalize stuff. But, again, I am Lilith incarnate. I am karma. They started it. I could have just, been like them and been, really immature and small and just taken all their booklets off the table last year to begin with, like they did with my cards. And then I would have never made the video, and then we wouldn't have had this issue. And I could have just done that again this year too. Maybe I should have just done that. But I decided to actually go the palace route. And actually have some integrity and class. And actually try to contribute something of benefit to the situation. Instead of just continuing perpetuating malicious, negative energy over and over again that serves no one. So it's pretty much evident. I'm probably never going to be able to lecture at NORWAC. So I recently posted that I'm interested in doing online classes, or at least even just offer, doing actual like Skype kind of, or group chat things with people live. And I'll kind of look into different platforms with that too. I'll talk to Matt about it because Matt knows. And then also just having pre-recorded, audio lectures or whatever that I'll actually just sell the MP3s or whatever. Those ones would be like more in depth, like book kind of level stuff. Because I'm supposed to supposedly, release a book by this fall. Not saying that was my deadline, but that was the deadline I was given astrologically, synchronistically, and by my astrologer, my astrological advisor. And even though I've been working on said book, there's no way I would get to a publisher in time. I don't want to do the online thing with Amazon or Llewellyn. And just because I do everything really weird, I'm going to do things a little bit different anyway. So essentially, I'm actually going to copy kind of like how Nostradamus did stuff, because him and I seem to have a lot in common. He released annual almanacs. And not necessarily I'm going to talk about the weather or anything, but I'm just going to reference generational aspects that will, progress throughout the year, or, be influencing the majority of the year. What those on a mental, physical, and sociological and spiritual level will translate to, the kind of challenges or issues or malefic, chaotic associations that may, surface or develop due to those things, and some coping mechanisms or unorthodox remedies, like for example, because of my quote-unquote negative ethers or negative mentality, or the negative whatever, evil is evil, negative whatever, no matter where it comes from, I'm doing that Lithia pagan ritual, even though I'm not familiar with pagan rituals and I don't normally do them, but I've thoroughly researched on it, and coincidentally I had ample time to make sure that I do it on time. And actually, as a matter of fact, so I had some of my amulet examples. This is the one I'm actually going to use. So it's a piece of wood, actually, that I've designed. So I have the Vesta symbol on there, the triangle of fire, which is associated obviously with the solstice, and then obviously since Lithia has to do with the moon goddess as well, and it has to do with harvest, there's a bunch of ivy and leaves and stuff around there as well. So the green and the yellow and the blue is associated with Lithia, and then obviously the orange and the red is associated with fire. And since Vesta has to do with cleansing and purification, I did it in blue there. So that's actually my amulet that I will be burying out in the woods. And I had a couple more examples that I already uploaded the photos of. So I'm actually going to do the monk ritual probably today or something like that. Ideally, you're supposed to be making your amulets today, or, you know, within the next day or so. There's no, like, you know, wrong way of doing it per se, and there's no, like, deadline per se that you had to do it way beforehand. But just from what I read and what I gather, it ritualistically or traditionally, they make the amulets a week beforehand. So, and by the way, amulets can be made out of any organic materials or anything that's handcrafted, man-made. So you could, like, I use that wood thing, or I've used polymer clay, polyclay, and then I've even used like wire and a gemstone. I would advise, if you're going to use actual gemstones, you can do two things with the amulet. You can either, you know, conceal it and protect it and keep it with you year long as a kind of something to ward things off, or if you're trying to actually reflect something, or, you know, basically cast something out, like I'm trying to do, more or less, then you make something obviously that you don't care if you go get rid of or bury out in the woods. If you had a nice gemstone, I don't think you necessarily, I mean, that's kind of where it came from. So I mean, if you want to recycle, you can do that, but do something that, you know, you don't have to, you know, sacrifice some sort of benefit per se. Unless you want to really take it literal with the whole offering sort of thing. You know, lithium, I like that. Who knows? But that's a example right there of some of my unorthodox, esoteric, ancient remedies for things. And I've explained, you know, the whole benefits of ritual psychologically. That either, you know, it's more of like a psychosomatic kind of thing. So either I'm you know, would convince myself that it works, or and your mind's very powerful, or that it actually does work, or that I somehow, like, kind of just am encouraging myself to have a stronger kind of mentality, or you know, reserve or whatever for anything chaotic or negative that comes my way. I'm empowering myself one way or another, regardless if it's actually through ritualistic chaos magic or if it's through psychological, psychosomatic self-help therapy. So that's how I like to integrate some of the ancient kind of remedies with modern psychology and different therapeutic tools. But yeah, so that's essentially what kind of like my almanacs will be. I'm sure I'll probably end up calling them something else. Oh, I don't know. If I call them almanacs, at least, like, I won't have to actually explain and people won't be confused per se. Well, that's asking a lot, actually. Assuming that people actually know what an almanac means. I'm always torn between, should I just use the same traditional words so I don't confuse people more? I'm like, wow, people don't even speak English very well or know what traditional words mean anymore. Hence the gender, you know, debate that we had. Yeah, I'm exhausted just talking about this. But yeah, so I'm going to start doing that instead of, I was thinking about this months ago, and I was like, no, the year's already started. I'm just going to make sure that, like, I do the Saturnian way. I'm going to thoroughly make sure that I have it perfect, the almanac perfect, and I will release it. It might be like a newsletter kind of thing. I might just actually make my own copies and, like, actually, you know, sell them and ship them out individually and see how that goes. I don't want to necessarily send PDFs because then that's easy for people to just like duplicate and send it to their friends or whatever like that. And I actually expect better from most of the people that probably like, you know, follow me, like, are the like my cult following sort of thing. When I say it like that, I don't mean it like that, but you know what I mean. The people that are like my avid, you know, supporters, I doubt that they would even do something like that. But just to avoid that sort of thing, I do have galactic center, yeah, the black holes and galactic center alignments with my 5th house self-expression and creativity. So that would be people stealing my work and my ideas and stuff. So I'll be doing the almanac thing, and I'm going to work out the kinks and the details, but I will be offering pre-recorded or live workshop lectures online at some point. Hopefully, I hope to get that up soon. I'm not even going to put a date on that or even give myself like an ETA, because I'll just be setting myself up for a panic attack or failure, or to defy that ETA or whatever. But that's generally in the works with that. I still would really love, like, since I'm going to be staying in the local area that I'm in, I still would really love to get in contact with like a local business, like a cafe or whatever like that, and actually see if, like, on one of their slow nights or something like that, if they'd be willing, regardless if I would have to compensate them or not, the whole, ideally compensating them by having people show up and then them buying, you know, beverages or whatever, would essentially be, I think, the even trade. But I would love to just do like a monthly transit kind of overview thing, kind of like what Rick Levine does in Redmond, Washington at the Soul Food Cafe and Books, but just do it over here in my area. That, and also doing it my way as well, because the only thing I have to criticize him on what he does is that he goes over the transits very thoroughly, and he's very, very informative, but he doesn't actually correlate any of those said transits to any kind of events going on. Like, he'll make vague references every once in a while, but he doesn't actually follow through and research and correlate, you know, the transits to, you know, to events. I think mainly because he just literally pulls up his chart like I did earlier, and just literally just starts from, you know, start to finish in 1 month, and just goes over it and doesn't do any preparation with that. Which, I mean, I can understand people not, but also if you're going to be expecting, like, people, like, have a full house and people just coming to your thing, and you essentially indirectly benefiting from that, either for publicity or, you know, people inquiring about readings and stuff, you think that maybe you would do a little bit more prep work, especially since that's like your job, like your profession. That's just me saying. And that's pretty bad when a Saturn Sagittarius person's saying that. I'm gonna go. This is really long. Yeah, if you actually watched all this, awesome. You should totally like it, so I actually know that you watched it, because you're gonna be like one of like the 5 people. In fact, I guarantee it. I'm gonna do something really, really sneaky. What is it? If you contact me before the end of June and reference, let me see, I gotta do something that, oh, here we go, something that nobody will think. I have a Beetlejuice action figure right here. If you say the discount word is Beetlejuice. So if you contact me, or, you know, basically email me or whatever for a chart, so I usually do those about $60 starting just for the basic charts, I'll give you $10 off a chart. And if you get a consultation done, the $120 session for the 90 minutes or whatever, the pre-recorded one, I'll take $20 off and make it $100. But the coupon word is Beetlejuice, just to see if there's anybody that actually watched this all the way. And don't tell anybody else. Don't tell anybody else about this code word. I just want to see actually who watched the entire thing. And well, people might still like it, but yeah. If you want to jump on that and take advantage of that, then go for it. You've got, today's the 13th, so you've got 2 weeks and 4 days to inquire about a reading. Even if you don't have the money right now and you want to do it like, you know, at the beginning of July, if you just contact me and we put it in the works and I make the invoice up before then, I'll still give you the discount. Awesome. Now I don't feel like such an ass for taking forever.